Hello and welcome to Chicago Reacts. My name is Colin, and today I'm watching The Emperor of Man 1, The Rise of Humanity, Warhammer 40k Lore slash History. And this is part 2 of 3 of my reaction to this video because it is an hour and a half long. So I thought it best to break it up into 3 parts. And yeah, this video came recommended from one of our subscribers named Davis0. So thanks again, Davis, for recommending this one. Or Davis0, I should say. I don't know. I assume your first name is probably Davis in real life. Is it Zero? I don't know about that one. That'd be an interesting last name, though. But yeah. So yeah, given how long this video is going to be, I'm going to keep the introduction short. So be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, with that being said, let's jump right into it, shall we?
So we return to our story, and at this time, in the golden age of technology, humanity continues to expand across the galaxy. Initially slowly, as the gigantic starships we crafted were incapable of using the warp to traverse space. And as we learned previous, they took generations to reach their destination. They were essentially travelling worlds, similar to the Eldar craft world of the 41st millennium. When these ships reached their destination, they would slowly be deconstructed, and their materials could be used to create massive war machines such as the Imperial Knights and Titans, which the colony could use to defend themselves against the dangers of the galaxy. Dangers such as the Eldar and Orcs, who were first discovered in this period as a result of our reaching out beyond our own system to more regularly explore the galaxy.
Now, that character there with the I don't know if you call that a horned helmet kind of thing, but that, is that Galactus that he looks like, that he's reminding me of from Marvel? I think it's Galactus. If I'm wrong, and if you're a Marvel fan or have Marvel knowledge, let me know. Let me know. Like I feel like if you know Marvel, you probably know who I'm thinking of. Yeah, let me know in the comments.
However, interestingly, during this time, humanity was actually considered more powerful than it is in the 41st millennium. This strength was mainly due to our technology rather than actual physical forces, such as Astartes, who did not exist in this age. Science was humanity's primary religion, and the society of man perceived itself as having reached a time where no one could be a real challenge to us. To a degree, this was actually true, so much so that the Xenos races of Eldar and Orc actually signed non-aggression pacts with mankind, which seems bizarre from the Orc point of view, but there we are. The discovery and use of...
Now, why would that be bizarre from the Orc point of view? I'm not recalling my Orc knowledge from what I've learned already. But I guess like during this particular period, when they're not necessarily at war, but they signed a pact of non-aggression. So what is it about that makes that a strange choice for the Orc, at least during this period, when humanity had vast technologies? Yeah. Let me know in the comments.
Interstellar drives, that is an engine enabling cross-warp travel, now powered humanity's expansion and domination of the galaxy forward. A federated government was formed, enabling us to create a strong trade community and, most importantly, remain unified and powerful throughout our colonies spread across the galaxy, aiding and supporting where necessary with either materials, logistics or military. The exact form and nature of this federation is unknown from this time, as so much knowledge and history was lost. To speculate though, it seems likely that from the way in which humans would live at this time, the Federation would have focused more on discovery, science and working to better humanity, as well as supporting our widespread colonies. As the societies we had seeded across...
Is this picture from Tron? Like, this looks like some Tron Legacy concept art, you know? Just seems like if it is from Warhammer 40k, I want to know more about it. Like, it seems more what do you call it? Like blueprints. You know, you got the lines. It's not really like solid structures. It seems like so. I don't know. It's a cool looking picture, but it doesn't look like what I've seen so far from Warhammer 40k. So it looks like Tron Legacy. You know, anyone else getting that vibe?
Across the galaxy grew stronger and more developed, most humans would live long, peaceful lives where menial actions were carried out by automation, leaving people time to indulge in their own lives and dedicate themselves to the glorious expansion of mankind. This golden age of peace bears a stark contrast to the unforgiving brutality of the 41st millennium, the Imperium where many citizens are now born into lives that are shorter, work-driven, and even hellish by comparison. Back with our timeline though, and although navigators had now been discovered and enabled interstellar travel, psychers, that is humans with strong psychic ability, had for the longest time evaded or simply passed undetected. It would be in the age of technology where this new class of human would finally be identified. These psychers seemingly largely avoided the demonic possessions which had occurred for the old ones, Orc and Eldar. It is unclear why this would be, but again you may speculate that the Emperor had a role to play in guiding and shielding humanity through this time. As we know, he had always lain in the shadows, ensuring our safety and creating small influence until he felt it was necessary to come to the fore. Another possibility is that by comparison, the Orcs and Eldar with their more advanced psychic powers simply shone brighter. As we know, the demons of the warp are actually attracted to psychic power in real space like moths to a lamp, and so they appeared amid the depths of the galaxy, a brighter beacon for the chaotic creatures to be attracted towards, whereas the human psychers were very early in development, their powers were less attractive, they did not stand out so much. These psychic mutations were initially limited to only a few individuals per billion or so humans, but toward the end of the age of technology, psychers would appear throughout the colonies more widespread than ever before. And some colonies who were advanced and open-minded, they could see the potential advantages brought by human psychers, and they were protected and allowed to develop and explore their abilities. However, on other, less advanced human colonies, they were often killed and hunted down as the people here feared rather than embraced their divergent powers, much of, similar to witch hunts. As I hinted at earlier, one of the reasons during the golden age of technology that humanity was able to not only survive but stretch itself out to colonize and conquer worlds in the galaxy, not to mention defending itself against aggressive Xenos, would be due to their reliance on AI and the machine creations of the time. However, as nearly all science fiction dictates, these primary sentient machines in the Human Galactic Federation would be known as the Men of Iron, and they would stereotypically turn on their creators and enter us into a cataclysmic war. An STC containing a template for the Men of Iron was discovered by Imperial forces on a chaos-controlled world. It became apparent that much as the Castigator class Titan, the Men of Iron here had also been corrupted by chaos, and the AI of these creations was sentient, so we can perhaps speculate that the Men of Iron initially resented their human creators, but combined with this were also corrupted, possibly by chaos, which at the time was relatively unknown to mankind, hence the lack of any documentation to support such speculation. It is, however, a possibility and stacks up with what we know of the corruptibility of human AI creations. Also, the intent of the dark forces of chaos to obliterate humanity once it became aware of its existence. Regardless of the reason though, this war was one of the greatest disasters to befall humanity and would rage for centuries. The exact length of the war is not recorded. The conflict was eventually won by humanity, but at a great cost. The damage caused by this conflict to interstellar human society was hugely destructive. We would lose masses of knowledge and technology, not to mention devastating humanity's economic strength and political unity. The war would begin the series of events that would lead into the collapse of the Federation of Humanity at the end of the Age of Technology. As so often is the case, very little information exists from this time, largely due to the Imperium being so wary of a similar disaster happening again. And this is why amongst the Imperium of mankind you'll find only the simplest forms of AI. It is viewed as being exceptionally dangerous technology and is strictly outlawed. A substitute is often to combine human and machine into mindless drone-like beings known as servitors. Servitors are the Imperium's cybernetic servants, lacking true self-awareness, and are created from the bodies of either condemned criminals who are unpleasantly lobotomized, or vat-grown humanoids whose bodies and brains are partially replaced with machine systems. As a result of this catastrophic conflict between the men of iron and humanity in the golden age of technology, it is now considered one of the most severe crimes in Imperial society to develop a self-aware, artificially intelligent machine. It is just considered too dangerous to even consider. Around Millennium 23, the warp was taking hold of psychers and wreaking...
God. I'm just looking at this face thing that's wrapped around this person's waist. That's very disturbing.
havoc on human colonies. Feudal night worlds were more conservative and less abiding of psychers, as we said previously, who had hunted them down. These would fare better than the others, who had adopted them more open-mindedly at the time. The knights in their semi-titan armour would battle massive warp entities and serve to protect the planet's human population, abiding to their strict code of feudal discipline and ability. Very often, they would be the bastions that protected mankind's worlds, and their importance cannot be underestimated at this time. As is often the case in history, it is not one, but a series of disasters that leads to total ruination, and this was no exception for the glorious empire humanity had established during the Dark Age of technology. Whilst it was struggling to recover from a collapse in its unity, as well as destruction of many of its resources and its ability to trade efficiently with other worlds, a new disaster would occur that would see the end of humanity's golden age and instead throw us further into near total annihilation. The race of man would never again reach this golden pinnacle of technological achievement. As we learned in ancient Eldar lore, it was at this time that the Eldar out in the galaxy would fall into near total destruction. These would be dark days indeed, as the Eldar were almost wiped out in a cataclysmic annihilation as the Chaos God Slaanesh was born into existence from the horrifically depraved mire that Eldar society had fallen into. This was a disaster for the Eldar, nearly extinguishing their light from the universe completely, but it didn't do humanity any favours either. The near destruction of the Eldar and birth of Slaanesh only came to mark the end of the Age of Strife. What caused it prior to these events was the ever-expanding sea of psychic energy known as the Warp. For many millennia, this had been growing more and more powerful, fueled by the nightmarish depravity that was Eldar society. Around the end of Millennium 24 and the beginning of 25, mankind was still struggling to recover from the disastrous war against its men of iron and its far-reaching impact on the previously secure and strong human federation. With their galactic unity destroyed, as well as suffering from the inevitable wounds of war, material shortages, mass loss of life and destruction of infrastructure, we would now face a new problem. Warp travel was becoming increasingly difficult. The warp's instability, caused in part by the Eldar's depraved psychic society, meant that many ships now would become lost and consumed by the warp as they were travelling through. This was not an issue for the Eldar themselves, as they used their webways to travel, which were outside of that warp space. For humanity though, it would be a severe problem, and its impact would deal the fatal blow to an already fragile empire. The losses and damage caused by the war with the Men of Iron, combined with now being unable to travel across the warp to cross those great distances in the galaxy, would ultimately return humanity to a pre-Dark Age of technology state, where only sublight travel was possible. This was a disaster. Trade and support could no longer be conducted, as these journeys would now take generations to complete. Humanity was once again isolated as it had been millennia before. The warp storms and the isolation they would create would last for over 5,000 years, and their effect on human society across the galaxy was catastrophic. Some planets with a significantly advanced human colony would survive into the future if they had the means to defend and support themselves. It's important to understand that when a system is set up with no established backup, its collapse has an immediate and profound impact. This was the case with mankind's trade system. It had grown over time to enable many planets to survive solely on imports from other rich parts of the human federation. Without this infrastructure and no way to gain outside support, disaster was inevitable. Many would turn inwardly to the colony, consuming themselves from the inside out, first with barbaric civil war and later total anarchy, fighting over the scarce resources that remained. The final phase often led the significantly depleted population into a feudal system of warlords and barbarism. This chaos was repeated across the majority of human worlds in this period, even including Earth. At this time on Earth, large areas across the planet had become massive cities reaching for hundreds of miles, and having become adapted to a system where all activities were conducted by machines, Earth also now relied heavily on trade from colonized worlds to support the extremely high population count. Additionally, much of the planet was no longer capable of food production and hadn't been for millennia, hence the need for colonies and expansion in the first place. With the inability to travel and trade, Earth descended into a similar fate of the less advanced worlds. First panic and general disorder, then food riots, resource hoarding, and finally complete anarchy. A tribal warlord system was all that remained of the few survivors left on Earth, brutal warriors who battled out across the deserts and hives of the remnants of civilization.
So I guess they had their like Mad Max phase, essentially. Yeah, I don't know. I can kind of see the world of Mad Max being a precursor to Warhammer 40k, minus some of the actual like magical gods and demons that exist. I don't know. So I get that they have this lore and this history of the whole world of Warhammer 40k, but like different versions or different games that are out there, do they explore these time periods? Like, do you get to play some characters during these eras, I should say? So I don't know, that'd be kind of fun. Like that's what's kind of cool about this whole thing of Warhammer 40k. It's so expansive. Like I feel like you can just like metaphorically drop a pin anywhere and explore that for I don't know however long. Yeah, I don't know. Kind of wanna explore that realm a bit, as a player. I think. Yeah. I feel like I've just been kind of sitting back and listening to a lot of this history just because it's so much to take in, but and it's interesting, but I haven't had necessarily much to comment on so far. It's just been a lot to take in, I guess, because I like it. I like getting all the information, the world building and stuff, So yeah, so I hope my silence isn't boring you guys. I hope you're as interested in what this video has to say as I am. But let's keep going.
This whole situation might sound unbelievable that society could collapse so quickly and to such a severe degree, but it's worth considering that in this time human society had built itself up to be so strong in belief of its own invincibility that they simply did not and could not have anticipated the severity of the warp storms or how they would debilitate the trade and support systems that they had been relying upon. Human history is littered with examples of sheer arrogance outweighing logic and reason, as well as blindly staring down dangerous facts in favour of belief in our own self-importance. The lack of planning when it comes to losing their infrastructure across human systems was an acute example of human arrogance. It would now seem as well that whatever had protected human psyches from demonic possession would now end. It's my speculation that, as previously stated, the Emperor was what provided this shielding, even though he was not known to humanity at this time, for he knew the power, importance and value of human psyches in the dark times that would...
Looks a little bit like Prince, doesn't it? Is that just me? No. Kind of. That's it.
lie ahead. Without this bubble of protection that had invisibly existed prior to this time, humanity's weak psyches would be consumed, possessed, and go completely insane, causing chaos among isolated, colonized worlds. This period of complete anarchy would last for some 5,000 years, and during this time, many colonies would forget their family out in the galaxy, as well as losing vast amounts of technology and knowledge. Only fragments of the glory of humanity would remain, preserved on the advanced worlds who were capable to survive this dark time. By the 28th millennium, almost all traces of civilization on Earth were gone. Instead, techno-barbarians battled one another over the scraps of the ancient human race. Mars, however, was one of the few worlds to undergo a different process. After a brief period of anarchy, the tech priests of the cult Mechanicus emerged victorious over the Psyker mutants, and then unified their homeworld. The priests visited Earth, but upon seeing its barren destruction, wrote it off as unsalvageable. They used any titans they had to help them in the future reunification of man. They would also be one of the few worlds to reach out and recolonize planets in this time. Using their knowledge of the warp, they chose moments of calm amid the storms of the time in the warp to travel through and establish new forge worlds. These were replicas of the tech homeworld of Mars and enabled them to continue support and recovery of the technology of man, as well as production of munitions and simpler war machines. But for humanity, its golden age was over. This dark age of technology had fallen apart catastrophically. Many of the weapons that once served mankind brought us to near destruction and turned lush garden worlds into irradiated deserts. Mechanical factory worlds into dystopian nightmares, beautifully advanced and artistic colonies turned into barbaric, nightmarish hells devoid of all morality. The age of strife was upon mankind, and only the further darkness of the future lay ahead. Roughly 5,000 years later, around the period of millennium 30 to 31, human society had reached a state of pitiful decay after cannibalizing itself for millennia. The Eldar had also reached the peak of their social decay, and so heralded the agonizing birth of the chaos god Slanesh, who would consume the majority of their population in one cataclysmic event that brought Eldar society to the brink of extinction. This horrific event, though, would have a positive outcome for mankind. It consumed all of that stored turbulent warp energy, so after thousands of years of instability, the warp returned to relative calm. Interstellar communication and travel would once again be possible for the civilization of mankind. So the age of strife was coming to an end, but before we move forward, we need to move back some 2,000 years to M28 to M30. Humanity had now come close to the brink of destruction itself. So many worlds had fallen into disarray, starvation, chaos.
I feel like something that would at least help me, I think, in absorbing all this information would be like a timeline laid out and like being able to pinpoint where exactly in the timeline we're at, because at least for me, jumping around with all the different years and whatnot it's hard for me to follow, I think, a little bit. I don't know if anyone else is having that issue, but yeah, because yeah, to move forward with the Emperor of Man, the Rise of Humanity, or wherever we're at here, the Emperor of Man and the unification, blah blah blah. That we have to also jump back 2,000 years. I don't know. I'm having trouble following, I think, at this point. But yeah, maybe it'll all make sense if we just keep going.
Anarchy. Now was the time. This would be the time where the mysterious and powerful psyker who had wandered amongst humanity for thousands of years would come to the fore to lead humanity from an edge of unsalvageable darkness back into the light and resume their place as a meaningful power in the galaxy. Earth had by now been reduced to a chemically irradiated barren wasteland, its population slaughtered, and all that remained were degenerate feral nomads fighting for irrelevant territories, insane wandering prophets, and cyber-augmented techno-barbarians who lived for nothing other than to fight, created in the cradle of world-ending war. Frail empires would rise and disintegrate as quickly and forgettably as they had risen. No tribe or faction had enough power or resources to make any meaningful stand, and so it went on, pathetic fighting over the remnants of a ravaged world. Out of this seemingly endless horror came a single man, a warlord like no other. His title in these early days is unknown, but we would know who he would rise to become: the Emperor of Man. He would first conquer and then rebuild humanity, leading it into the light, saving it from itself to form his autocracy, known as the Imperium of Mankind. Unlike so many before him though, he had power not only as an unstoppable warrior, but in many other traits such as rational thinking, tactics, philosophy, economics, compassion, foresight, and perhaps most importantly, a genius of science, everything and more that would be required for a supreme leader. The Emperor though fought not for selfish personal gain or bloodlust of war like all the other scattered remnants of humanity left on Earth. He had selfless, higher goals to restore humanity spiritually, intellectually and physically, to revert us to a time of strength and prosperity. These were the years of the Unification Wars. The Emperor had long held a facility deep in a range of mountains previously known as the Himalayas. This was his most significant stronghold and would later become the Imperial Palace. Here he experimented with genetics as well as developing and constructing weapons and armor.
The design of this armor here kind of makes me think of like the descriptions of what people see when they trip on what is it? Maybe ayahuasca or something like that. The one that where they see those what are they? I think they're described as what is it? Like techno elves or something like that? Or what is it? Electric elves maybe? Just some of the intricate designs there, you know, and the colors and whatnot. Kind of like some aspects of it. I don't know. Like the belt there, kind of at the bottom. I don't know. It's kind of giving me those vibes. It's very trippy, and I think it's fitting for you know who the Emperor is, to kind of seem very ethereal and to possess all knowledge in the universe, kind of thing. Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of what it was making me think of. And if anyone knows else what I'm referring to, let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments. Yeah. Let's keep going.
For his warriors. In the earliest days, he would physically and genetically augment some of the most powerful barbarians. These humanoids would become known as the Thunder Warriors. The very first of their kind and the most basic template would eventually become the Imperial Space Marines, the Astartes, the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Under unsurmountable pressure from the Emperor's army of Thunder Warriors, the barbaric factions fell quickly and humanity was united on old Earth for the first time in centuries. This, however, would come at a terrible cost for the Thunder Warriors themselves, and is one of the least known yet darkest events for mankind.
It's giving me like Macho Man Randy Savage vibes. Oh yeah!
In order to unify Earth and bring humanity back on the path of advancement and strength, the Emperor had found it necessary to in part cleanse the savagery that had grown on the war-torn planet. This sadly meant the death of many arguable innocents during the Unification Wars, as well as the eradication of the last remaining religious church on Earth, known as the Church of the Lightning Stone. The Emperor is known to have personally spoken to the last remaining priest before bringing in his new age of enforced secular rationalism and the ideology known as the Imperial Truth. This essentially tells that humanity are now those destined to be the rulers of the galaxy. The Eldar had their chance and failed, and now humanity are the best set to take their place as the dominant force. This ideology would soon be brought to all the scattered worlds of humanity in the long crusade that was yet to come. Now, the official version of things tells how the last battle of the Unification Wars takes place on Mount Ararat. This siege to cleanse the last of the techno-barbarians from the ruined wastes on Earth and finally bring it back to a time of peace and growth was said to be so brutal that waves of Thunder Warriors fell against the rocks and resistance were slain to a single man, the legendary warrior Arik Taranis, the Lightning Bearer. He would raise the banner of lightning to mark the end of the Unification Wars, setting in place the rule of the Emperor of Man, before he too would fall to fatal wounds suffered in this battle of legend. As with many things, the official version is not the end of the story. The actuality of the event was darker and far more sinister. The Emperor knew that in order to restore peace, growth and a sense of civilization to his new and expanding empire, he would require a more stable and balanced force than the Thunder Warriors, who were essentially just adept brutes recruited from the wasteland, albeit clad in the earliest Imperial armor. In a necessary betrayal, the Emperor realized that in order to safeguard what he had achieved, his army of barbaric fighters could not exist past this time. It is believed that he actually ordered the many Thunder Warriors who had survived the final battle to be slaughtered by his elite guard, and possibly even some of the early proto-Astartes who were at this time far advanced beyond most of his standard force. This terrible secret has been concealed from the people of the Imperium for more than 10,000 years, and were it ever to be revealed, the consequences could be unimaginably disastrous. The Emperor, though, saw this necessary evil had to come to pass for the greater good, a sacrifice of the few to save the many who would come. The Thunder Warriors were built for war, and war alone, and would not be able to adapt to a time of peace, and could even have turned a vital tool into a dangerous, unstable threat.
I'm kind of like, I'm looking at this guy, or these two guys, kind of the upper right screen. They're just like holding those skulls. What are they doing? Like what exactly, like, what are they doing with those skulls there? What? Like, I'm not seeing any like laser beams or anything being shot from the skulls or any other aspect. It doesn't look like they're really weapons of any kind that I can tell. They're just kind of like holding them out there. Like, I mean, it's disturbing. It's kind of spooky looking, but it can't just be purely an intimidation tactic, right? So if you know what's going on with those guys, let me know in the comments. And I don't know, other than that, the only other comment I have regarding this picture is that it's giving me what's it called? Super Troopers, right? Their outfits there, it looks kind of like Super Troopers-esque. But anywho, I digress. Let's keep going.
That could unbalance all that he had achieved. In order for the next stage of his plans, he also required that humanity rally behind him as the sole and most powerful force. The slaughter of the Thunder Warriors was not the last act of betrayal, though, by the Emperor. He would then take the necessary glory that he had near single-handedly reunified Terra. This distortion of the truth, while hugely distasteful, does appear largely necessary to reunite the whole of humanity and create the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. Nonetheless, should the truth ever arise, it would at best split apart the Imperium and at worst destroy it. These choices by the Emperor are important to remember in the context of his character, as it can lead to certain logical speculations regarding future events. Some Thunder Warriors, though, would find fate on their side and escape this mass killing and live on as homeless unknowns seeking out a miserable existence at the bottom of society. honours forgotten, their deeds meaningless, all the while fearing constant discovery from the Imperium and certain death. This heartless betrayal was surely one of the darkest periods in Imperial history. They were never hunted, though, in any significant way. The Emperor believed them all dead, and besides, there were far more important tasks at hand, as the Emperor now gathered a team of gene wrights salvaged from the few remaining humans on Earth. These were men with practical knowledge of genetics to aid in his development of the new Astartes project. Those Thunder Warriors who did escape were not like the Astartes of the 41st millennium. They were genetically unstable, and most significantly, they only had a minimally extended mortality beyond that of a regular human, unlike the Space Marines who can live on for thousands of years. The Emperor had been working for decades on his Astartes project, deep within his mountain facility. Here he would create the vital foundations that would springboard humanity into a new age. His experiments would create the 20 Space Marine legions known as the Legiones Astartes, as well as 20 Primarchs to lead each legion. These 20 supreme leaders of the soon-to-come Space Marine legions were crafted by the Emperor using samples of his own arcane genetic code as the base. It is obviously unknown the depth of which the Emperor used his own DNA to create the Primarchs, but later findings through ancient Imperial records do hint that he spliced multiple DNA types together, even going so far as to introduce some animal DNA into the Primarchs. And this would explain why some, such as Lehman Russ, would display the wolf-like qualities, and why these would then become present throughout the Space Wolves Legion and chapter. It is difficult to speculate on the Emperor's true goals here, and even if he was successful in the mixing of DNA in this way, it seems highly experimental, and perhaps he himself was not sure of the final result. This period of intelligent design was hasty and somewhat improvised given the dire situation facing mankind. It needed to repopulate its military power in order to springboard and take stage fights forward to reconquer the colonies. Another point of speculation is how closely the Primarchs were imbued with spiritual elements and others such as unnaturally skillful charisma and so on. Still though, in creating the Primarchs and even taking small elements of the Emperor's DNA, it imbued them with these demi-godlike characteristics. It also explains why at this time the barely known forces of chaos would seek out and scatter the developing Primarchs before the Emperor's plans could grow into fruition. Little is known of this Primarch scattering event, but it has been suggested that the dawning forces of chaos felt this expanding power from humanity to threaten them, and in an effort to slow or negate it, they reached out into the mortal world to seize and scatter the fetal Primarchs across the galaxy. Each world they found themselves on would surely in time come to realise that they were far from normal, often finding themselves as a natural leader in command of the systems that would become their home. Later the Emperor would one by one discover and reunite the Primarchs with their legions, establishing one of the most powerful military forces the galaxy had ever seen. The Thunder Warriors, though, were undoubtedly the early prototypes for the Astartes project, which subsequently makes their untimely end all the more tragic, as their sacrifice was so...
Alright, I'm not sure if there's a good place to stop here. But in the effort to try to keep these videos at like somewhat of an even length, I'm gonna stop it here. Maybe go back a little bit for the next video. But yeah, holy moly, it's just a lot of information. I don't think I'm absorbing all of it as well as I could. I don't know about you guys, if you're more familiar with this material already, or if you're coming at it at a fairly new perspective like I am. But man, yeah, I think maybe like having a timeline visual would maybe help with some of this, instead of some of these just, you know, really interesting, like cool fan art stuff. But I find myself, I'm a very visual person, so I'm like always, you know, scanning these pictures for like information, and that's where I'm getting like most of my thoughts to share for these reactions. But I feel like I'm losing a lot of the information that he's saying, so that's on me, I guess. But yeah, it's very intricate. I might, like, you know, I'm not gonna record this multiple times and release it, but I might have to go back and just keep rewatching these just for myself to kind of absorb more info. Like I'm getting the gist of it. But man, it is a lot. Yeah. All right then. Well, if you're still here, thanks for sticking around. I hope you're enjoying. And be sure to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. You've heard me say it once. You've heard me say it twice. And I'll say it each video because that's what I have to do. That's the thing. That's what we do on YouTube. Constantly begging for subscribers. Please subscribe. But yeah. Thanks for watching, everyone. And you know, I've already said that like, share, and subscribe. You know, that's a good way to be notified for the next video. Hopefully, it'll be coming out around the same time or shortly after this one. So yeah, thanks for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.